Hey everybody, it's Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. I am in Winfield, Alberta, just getting ready to kick off another Let's Talk Alberta event in which we share our opinions with Albertans and hear from them and discuss important issues to Albertans. So thank you for being here. We're going to get started shortly. It is 6:51 right now. Speakers will be starting about 7:10. So we'll see you then.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a Let's Talk Alberta event where the whole purpose is actually just what the name says, to get people talking. And so we welcome people who are on either side of the issue. Some are on the fence. Some of you have made up your minds. So we're hoping that tonight, after the presentation, we'll have a really vibrant time of question and answers. And speaking of question and answers, if any of you feel you have questions but are a little nervous, a little shy to ask them, come and see me. We'll write them down and we'll get your questions taken care of. We're happy that you have all come out here tonight, and we hope that by the time you leave tonight, you will find that your time was well spent and that you go home with something of value. You've learned something. Maybe it's provoked you to ask more questions. But at the end of the day, when October 19th comes, you will be able to make an informed decision. And that's our goal. Housekeeping issues, there are exits, two, one on the left, one on the right, and I believe there's one over here. There are washrooms as soon as you go out the door here to the right. Little caveat, the men's room, you might want to go take a little detour to the right. There's another set of washrooms there. The one here is not functioning as well as it could, and unless you want to be mopping later, I would go to the other one. If you haven't yet, please grab a coffee, something to drink. We also have, as you came in, you saw the merchandise at the back. And sometimes you don't know how to get a conversation started. There's lots of things out there that you can wear, and that should get a conversation started. There's also a sign-up table at the back. You can leave your name, you can leave a phone number, and if there's an event in your area, we'll contact you and let you know. Also, if you would like to volunteer, you can tick off, there's a little place for you to tick off and say you would like to be a volunteer with Let's Talk Alberta. So how the evening is going to go is tonight we actually have 4 speakers. And we would ask that during their presentation, you would hold your comments, hold your questions, and just keep them for the time later on after everyone has spoken. You will be given the opportunity to comment or ask questions. One question from me right now is, how many of you here have never attended one of these events before? Oh, good. Well, welcome. Typically, we begin our evening with a time of prayer, and if prayer is not part of your lifestyle, you can use that time to reflect. And I'm going to ask Patty Vold, who is the provincial lead for Let's Talk Alberta, to come and open in prayer.
Father, we thank you for this country that you have blessed us with, for the prairies, the mountains, and we thank you for the rain. Man, that was sweet. Lord, you have given us as people of Alberta to be caretakers of this land. And we ask that you bless this evening and you bless our thoughts and our words. This is a huge responsibility, to be able to pass on something that is better than we received it for the future. You know the future, we don't. So Lord, we ask that you bless this evening, and we ask that you bless Let's Talk Alberta and the people that are involved. And we thank you, Jesus, for who you are and for what you've done. In your name, amen.
So it's my privilege to introduce our first speaker for tonight, Mr. Ben Crane. And he's just a very talented person. He draws, he sings, he writes, and as I like to say, he's not only good at those things, but he's a really decent and good human being, and I'm so...
Keep going, keep going. I can sit down.
Okay. Did I say he was a comedian? He is. It's just been such a privilege to have gotten to know you, and so without further ado, here's Mr. Ben Crane.
Now you tell me. How in the world are you tonight? Oh, it's green out there. Oh, I love it. I love it. I really appreciate you guys coming out tonight, and thank you again to Let's Take Alberta boys for asking me to join and be a speaker. It's kind of funny because I don't speak as a general rule. I sing, or I draw really very serious pictures. Yeah, but I am passionate about this, and so I want to just talk to you tonight for a few minutes about what I think is the root of where things start. Anything starts. That's with that little thing called identity. And I think it's a fascinating thing, but that's probably the biggest reason why I'm involved in this, because I've seen things get taken identity-wise. It's really interesting. We're all designed right from the start to identify with something that's bigger than us. We join clubs of common interest. We all cheer for the Flames. And, well, you don't? There's people out there who don't. We just naturally look for something to be a part of, a tribe, an identity. See, when I was born way back in the 1900s, I was given a name of my own. They called me Ben. They gave that name to me. They gave me that identity, my mom and my dad. And then they gave me another name, Crane. That's the last name of the tribe that I belong to. They gave me an identity. And I think it's very interesting. Identity is something that can be given to you, or you can build it yourself, but it's also something that can be took away from you. We moved to Alberta when I was 2. We escaped from New York State. I was glad. We went back a few years after that, and they stack them 3 deep over there. There's a lot of people. But Canada became our new identity. It was a country that was revered and respected worldwide. We were a significant force in the freeing of all kinds of places in Europe in the Second World War. And then my wife and kids and I went down to Dominica, a little tiny little island in the Caribbean, just to have a little holiday. And we got talking with the locals, and when they said, "Where are you from?" and we said, "Canada," they said, "Oh, we love Canada. You guys helped us rebuild, you built us schools and hospitals and all this kind of stuff after a very devastating hurricane had come through, and they just loved us." We had, as a country, an identity. But about a half a century back, the leaders of Canada started changing that, and they decided that we were now a multicultural country. And that sounds good at first glance, but what it really means is we don't have a specific identity. So they took that. And then other things that have kind of stolen identity and changed identity. Ottawa has aligned itself with global governance. I don't know, that new world order that they talk about. and this whole thing of changing borders. Borders are problems because, well, that causes strife. So if we get rid of the borders, then everybody will get along just fine. And I say the opposite. This is my opinion, okay? Like, none of us here tonight are leaders of Alberta. We have opinions, and that's what you're going to hear, and then we want to hear yours too. So I just wanted to say that. Global single world governance ideology states that borders are the cause, but I suggest the opposite. I think that being human is the cause of human strife. And actually, borders protect us. They protect us from one group of people invading and obliterating another outfit with differing opinions. And borders help protect our identity. I keep getting back to identity. And it also helps us respect those who have a different idea and a different identity. Basically, I had a whole bunch of things to say here, but it's just the main thing that's really been bugging me is this changing of identity. I want my identity back. I never really gave it up, but it seems like it's being told. Different things are told to us and expected that we're supposed to change. Now, I want to fast forward to something that's really, it's making my head itch just a little bit. And that's that the opposition to Alberta independence by other conservatives really has me baffled. Because it honestly appears to me that we both want the same thing by and large. And that's where I see us actually somehow trying to figure out how to work together. We want to be proud of our country. They want to be proud of our country. We want to honor the vets who have fought and died for our values and our identity. They want the same thing. We want to have a safe place to live and to raise our kids the way we want to raise our kids. We want to have freedom to be ourselves and to thrive and to work without being controlled and censored. Oh, picture, sorry. Your camera will never work again, Bonnie. We want to be free to be ourselves and to thrive and to work without being controlled and censored. We want to be free to hold and to voice our own opinions and to practice our own faith. I really appreciate what you said, Patty, about if there's folks in the room that don't do prayer, don't sweat it. We can all work together. We want our vote to actually count. How about that one? We want fiscally responsible small government with moral integrity. That nasty little thing that gets in the way of a good time. Oh, you know, we share so many goals. We could go on, even though we disagree on how to achieve them. And we have to actually realize that unity is not sameness. There's been a lot of definite words that have changed definition over the years. And unity is actually making the intentional decision to work together in spite of, and maybe even embracing our differences. So my question to you, neighbor, what kind of a country do you want? Do you really want the direction that Ottawa has been taking us for a good half a century? And specifically the past few decades? Or do you want to retain the culture and the core values and beliefs and identity that Alberta was founded upon over 100 years ago? That's what I'm fighting for myself, for my family, my grandkids, who are sixth generation on the family farm. We've been there a while. And that stuff is very important to me. And fighting to retain our identity. For the very first time in the history of our province, and probably obviously, I don't think there's anyone over 120 years old here, except maybe Sheane. But for the first time in the history of our province, all the way back to 1905, we will have a say in how a new country is run. That excites me. That gives me hope. I have never been asked how I want to be governed. I've never been asked how I want my country to be. In fact, it's been the opposite. And this is where I'm wanting to go. So we need a new border to protect our identity and to respect another culture without feeling that it's being forced upon us. We can still be friends. We can work together. We can have business relationships. We can all kinds of trade agreements. This isn't enmity. This is let us be free to be ourselves. That's what I want. Canada's culture and people, I believe we should build a country that honors family and faith in freedom. And the only way to accomplish that is to separate. I have looked at this, and I'm not an educated man. I haven't spent my entire time following politics. But I do have a thing called common sense. And my spidey senses tingle a little every once in a while when I see something that's wrong. So the only way to accomplish that, I believe, is to separate. And that way we can become respectful business partners and friends and still maintain who we are. It's a win-win. They changed identity. We haven't. The only way to predict your future, I just read, is to write it. So let's grab a pen and start writing. The boss, Sheane, when he asked me to join this tatterdemalion assemblage, I paid big dollars for those words. He said, well, you're a songwriter. He said, why don't you just write a song? So I did. Oh, don't get too excited. You ain't heard it yet. But I went home, and the only thing I could not get out of my head was the idea of my roots in Alberta. Now, like I said, I wasn't born in Alberta, but I've been raised ever since I was 2 years old. And I love this place, folks. I had never been paid to say it, but I absolutely love it. I've written probably 6 songs about Alberta. But this one talks about my roots, so I hope you'll enjoy it. The only life I know goes back 100 years, steeped in deep traditions of blood and sweat and tears. The value of hard work, common sense and hope and truth, family and freedom, and the value of our youth. So it makes me want to hold on to what I know is right, and in the face of opposition, stand our ground and fight. Our Alberta roots run deep. It's in my blood, in my bones. It gets stronger every day. And when somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, I just draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep. We got some rowdies in the house tonight. It's living on the land, watching life come and go, working hard and playing hard, in sunshine and in snow. We don't really ask for much, 'cause we know that God provides, and He's given us all the things we need to enjoy this life and thrive. So it makes us want to hold on to what we know is right, and in the face of opposition, stand our ground and fight. My Alberta roots run deep. It's in my blood, in my soul, it gets stronger every day. When somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, I just draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots, you can't hide it, they define us. They made us who we are today, and when life sits good, you just don't throw it away. 'Cause our Alberta roots run deep. Pick them up, dig them out. They go deeper every day. And when somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, I just draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep, run deep. Well, I appreciate that. And then there's one more about a week later. It just kind of fell out. This hole in the guitar is where songs fall out. And I shook the guitar and this one came out. The thing that's been funnest for me is running with this group of guys is they all smarter than me. We got lawyers, constitutional lawyers, we've got political scientists, we've got economists, we've got politicians, we've got, and me. But the thing is, I've been learning so much, especially about the history of our province. I did not know a lot of stuff, and Sheane is a good guy for giving you the history of it. I'm sure some of that will come out tonight. But I had to write a song about the history. I did not know that we didn't even ask to join in the first place. Big dreams. The dance floor is open. No, we didn't ask to be brought here back in 1905. We was just fine, spending our time to mind our own business and thrive. But the East had different ideas, too good a deal to pass up. They saw what we had and they wanted it bad, so they signed us up there on the spot. They said, we'll call you Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. I know, you do the work, we'll take the pay. That makes us the ultimate team. That's right. Well, we realized that we was a peasant. Man, this arrangement just didn't go far. They said, you feed the cow. We may allow you to take a small sip from the jar. Well, things just got worse as the time flew. The feds kept us stomping our necks. They'd take all our pay, keep our assets at bay. The whole thing's become a big wreck. Say goodbye to old Alberta. Man, ain't nothing left of our dreams. We're told what to think. Election day stinks. They've taken out all of our means. Well, we've had it, we're rattled, we're just gonna move on and take back what's ours from the start. We ride a new course, chart a new course, thank God we'll be finally free. So raise a glass to good old Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. We're happily free to be who we should be and rid of the liberal schemes. So let's break the chains and breathe free again. Thank God that we're finally free. Yeah. Too much foolishness. Thank you. Thank you, guys. We appreciate that a bunch. It is my privilege to introduce to you one of my new friends, and his last name is Trudeau. And I think we've actually made history because people in Alberta actually clap for a man whose name is Trudeau. Ben has been in politics ever since he was a kid. His dad made sure of that, and he's moved out to Alberta. He's got a very interesting, cool way to look at things. And I tell you, every one of these guys is different, but Ben and I are about most different of all. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Trudeau.
Yes, good night, everyone. Yes, I'm related. Before everybody asks the question, 14 generation path. So the first Trudeau's the Canadian name. The first one to come was Trudeau with a T, and he was hired by the King of France to build as a contractor in Old Montreal in 1648. And he had a bunch of sons and a bunch of daughters, and I'm from the second of his 6 sons, and the infamous ones from the first one of the 6 sons. And the third one became the first mayor of New Orleans, because at the time Montrealers were explorers, and they founded towns like New Orleans and Detroit and Biloxi and Chicago, and all these were founded by Montrealers. I was raised in a very political environment, not because of my name, because of my dad's job. He's a speechwriter and PR guy, and was very involved in the early 70s in all the independence movement. He was there, and his office was ransacked by the army when Trudeau called the military in Montreal in October 1970, where he got 12,000 soldiers parked in the street of Montreal with tanks at the corner of the streets, and they received a list from the Liberal Party at the time of 435 names that were all arrested at 4 a.m. that night. Poets and singers, guys like Ben Cranes, and people that would dare singing against the Liberal Party. So that's the Canada that I know. That's the Canada I grew up in. And amongst the 435 arrested, one of them spent 14 years in jail, 7 years without trial, and 10 were deported to Cuba for 10 years. And when they came back, they were arrested again. So this is how Canada treats its people. In 1980, I was only 8 years old. My dad was involved in that first referendum campaign that brought 40% for the yes. And the speech of René Lévesque at the end was, see you next time. That next time was after two other rounds of constitutional negotiation, 1987 with Meech Lake, and 1992 with Charlottetown, which was the first referendum that I was involved personally. I started doing politics myself at 14 years old with the Liberal Party of Quebec. And when our leader, Robert Bourassa, used his veto against the 2,000 youth in the party to go against our vote, basically a democratic vote in the party, we all left the party. And we campaigned for the no for Charlottetown in 1992. In 1994, I was part of the same group of youth. We started our own political party named the ADQ at the time, Action démocratique du Québec. I was a candidate at 22 years old. Our leader was 24, was elected. But that party gathered 7% of the votes. And that was the balance of power. The yes needed us to have that referendum go through. So the question that was carved out was in fact coming from our party, because we are not separatist. I am still not separatist. I'm talking to you tonight saying that I am not for separation of Alberta. And I will tell you why tonight I'm not for separation of Alberta. I'm a fierce sovereignist. I believe that Alberta hasn't even began to do what they can do under the Canadian Constitution to change what we do. And so I wrote out a book that I published in February. And in that book, I go back to the history of a country, starting in 1534, when it's really started. All those who lost their life for sovereignty, mainly French Canadians. You know, like in 1900 in Montreal, there's a very, right now it's a bit of a plush area named Griffintown. The life expectancy Griffintown in 1900 for a French Canadian was 19 years old. So the French in the 60s, there's a guy named Pierre Vallière who wrote a book. The title of his book is The White Negroes of the North. So when my dad was young, there was restaurant for the French, restaurant from the English. 6% of English was controlling over 90% of all the finance. So when Canada couldn't beat us at the rebellion of 1837, where they hung 12 of the leader of the separatist movement, they decided to assert French Canadian economically. So in 1900, not only did we have a life expectancy of 19 years old, but we couldn't get a loan if you were French Canadian. So what we did, instead of crying and just like people had pity on us, we took over what we could, and we created our own bank. It's called the Caisse Populaire des Jardins. Today, Caisse Populaire des Jardins, it's a co-op, and it holds, it has 7.8 million out of the 9 million Quebecers have an account at Desjardins. Today, it has over $500 billion of asset as a co-op. So that was the first move, because Quebec understood that if you want some power, it's the golden rule, who have the gold rules. So they realized that it starts by who controls the money. So they start running their own money. Then in 1957, they created their own provincial, their own provincial taxation system. And this is when the acquisition appeared, by the way. When Quebec decided to collect its own tax, otherwise said, okay, but then if you collect too much, we'll need to give to poor West, who's just starting. And by the way, Alberta got the equalization maybe 5 years in all the history of the system. 1957, Quebec start taking their own money, their own tax. 1965, the government say, hey, we want to create a pension plan. And Quebec say, we're not interested in your pension plan, we'll create our own. So Quebec create their own pension plan at the same time as the Canadian pension plan was created in 1965. 61 years later, the Canadian pension plan proudly have 700 billion of asset for 22 million insured. The Quebec pension plan has 500 billion of asset for 6 million insured. Quebec pension plan is 3 times more performant than the Canadian pension plan after 60 years. The Quebec pension plan owns more real estate in Alberta than the government of Alberta. So the Cross Iron Mill in Calgary, it's owned by the Quebec Pension Plan. The outlets here at the airport in Edmonton are owned by the Quebec Pension Plan. They own towers in Edmonton, under the Mall. So Quebec Pension Plan had an obligation to reinvest in Canada. So right now, Quebec owns 70 billion of assets in real estate around here. So if you gather what the people of Quebec owns through their pension plan and through their co-op, it's over 1 trillion. So why am I saying that? Because I'm saying that Alberta, we need to do the same. What we need is a change in our political culture. What we need is politicians provincially that will have the courage to keep our money here. It's a shame that every Friday afternoon, Alberta collects its own royalties on oil and gas. You know where that royalties are deposited? At the CIBC. So every Friday afternoon, last Friday, right now, we're collecting about 700 million a week in royalties. Last Friday afternoon, 700 million was deposited in Toronto. During the weekend, they made 2 to 3 million in interest on our 700 million. Why isn't that deposited at ATB and within the 13 credit unions we have in the province? We need to be more Albertan in what we required. We need to follow what Quebec did in terms of using the Constitution. Quebec has 38 embassies around the world. When you're a Quebecer in Paris, you don't go to the Canadian Embassy, you go to the Maison du Québec, to the Quebec Embassy in London, in New York, in Washington. Quebec do not use the Canadian embassies nowhere on the planet. Quebec has its own seats at the UN, 2 seats, not under Canada, under Quebec directly. And all that is constitutional. Quebec has its own immigration. My sister, Vietnamese, we adopted her in 1981. A couple of years after, we knew that her family was still living in Vietnam. My dad managed to have the rest of the family move in Quebec. When you move in Quebec as a new immigrant, you have to go through a training. We tell you what are the value of the province and all that. And after that, you have to sign a contract with society. You have to sign a paper saying, I learned what Quebec is, what are these values, and I signed that I will do the same, including learning French. If you don't want to sign, no driver's license, no social securities, no healthcare, go to Toronto. And this is exactly what the dad of my sister did in 1987. No, like, I moved here, I was 35 years old. I met my wife here in Edmonton. We have 4 kids, all born here at the Grey Nuns in Edmonton. My youngest one is here, Joel. And and when I wrote my book, I said, you know what? I am as a fierce Albertan as much as I was a fierce Quebecer down there, and I come here with the same value, to keep stuff Albertan. And I said, so what is an Albertan? And I kind of did a lot of reflection, a lot of thinking of what makes an Albertan an Albertan. And I came with 8 critical values. Heartstring number 1, enduring moral compass. So Judeo-Christian values define our laws and identity. Heartstring number 2, earned equality. Merits matters, not identity markers. Heartstring number 3, hands-off freedom. Small government, stay in your lane. Heartstring number 4, pioneer grit. Family-centered, self-reliant, property-respecting. Heartstring number 5, real leaders, real results. Builders, not spenders. Conviction, not corruption. Heartstring number 6, wise land guardianship. Sustainable use by those who live here. Heartstring number 7, move or die accountability. Self-reliance, personal responsibility. Heartstring number 8, proud Canadian Albertan. Honor the past, defend the future. And all 8 has been utterly baffled by Ottawa. So my message here tonight is that there is another way than separation. But right now, we face a referendum. We face question. We face a debate that needs to be taken. We have to start talking about these things, and we have to go through it. We have to get a high vote result for that referendum. In 1995, we lost the yes by 54,000 votes. There was 85,000 rejected ballots. But the participation rate was 95%. You know, there's some polling stations that we could go at 6 p.m. and there was nobody. It was like desert. And then say, what's happened? And they will look at us and say, everybody came to vote. 100%. came to vote. So this is what we need here. We need to speak loudly on that referendum. We need to tell we want stuff to change because it needs to change. And whether it is through separation, which is not the way it's not my privilege way, because I believe it's way more, there are way too much hurdle there than just like, no, for me, there's two ways to attack a castle. Either you throw a rock at it, or you go inside, you dismantle it from the inside. And this is the way that Quebec choose. They're dismantling from the inside. And I am not at all have the same values than Quebecers now. But I can tell you something, that we can use the same systems and the same system according to the same constitution. We have control over how we apply sorry, when there's a word that's too close to French, I have difficulties with them. So our justice system is provincial, how it's applied. Their health is strictly provincial. The immigration is provincial. Representation abroad is provincial. So we have to start starting asserting who we are and starting to control what we can under our constitution and start like forcing the machine to change. My dream, there's an election coming up in Quebec just before our referendum. I believe the PQ will come in. If the PQ come in, I believe after October 19, we should do an alliance with Quebec and just attack the feds together. And Quebecers will be behind us. Thank you. So at the exit here, I have my books for sale. They're $20 each. Meanwhile, I have the honor to introduce Jason Levine from the Jason Levine Show, one of the great podcasters of the province.
Bonsoir, mon ami, comment ça va? Je m'appelle Jason Levine. Pardon. Sorry, you left it en français, so sorry about that. My name is Jason Levine. Thank you very much for being here tonight. I am the host of the Levine Show, and I'm very pleased to have been asked to speak at the very last minute. Apologies for Sheane. He has a headache, so thanks, Sheane, for the opportunity to come up here and speak. I never thought I'd take the stage after Trudeau, to be honest with you. I'm going to get very honest with you. I never thought that would happen. And then I didn't cross the floor to be here either, so just want to say. I am the host of the Levine Show, and I'm a father of two and a husband of one. And it's going to stay that way, right, Paula? Excellent. How many people here heard about this on X? Heard about this event on X? Facebook? The CBC? Yeah, we see you guys back there. What I'm here to talk a bit about is, first, I didn't have anything prepared, so I'm going to have to use my ears and listen and then speak to you. But what I heard Ben say there, a couple things kind of caught my attention. $500 billion in the pension plan in Quebec? $500 billion in their co-op bank? How much of that came from Alberta? That does not sound like a have-not province to me. So when we take a look at this formula, we're supposed to be helping out the ones in need. 3 times the pension plan of the rest of Canada? That sounds really unfair to me. Anybody else catch that? I was kind of wondering, like he's up here pitching to you the idea of just be like Quebec. Say we're in poverty, but have our hand out when we're not? Like, I'm not interested in that. Taking from our neighbors when we can do our own? I'm not interested in that. In fact, he sounded a little bit like Kenny at the end of the debate with Keith Wilson, where he said Alberta has other options under the Constitution, they just need to enforce it. But did Kenny realize that he was the premier and he could have done that? Was he saying Daniel Smith could have done that? Even all the way back to Ralph Klein? I think we've tried, Ben, with all due respect, I think we've tried some of the things you've offered there. I think we need to look at some serious changes around here. Because I wasn't pleased to hear how rich Quebec is. I really wasn't. I was born in a French family, and I thought my name was Tabernac until I grew up and learned it wasn't. But what I'm here to kind of talk to you about is, what do we do with this? I do think this is a bit of a choir here, and we're preaching to it. But I think if we want to get ahead in this next little part of the campaign, we need to follow the great modern philosopher, Judge Judy, when she says, you're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It's time for us to start listening to our neighbors, the ones that are unsure on what we're doing here, the ones that listen to some of the mainstream and think that we are racist, chauvinist, every ist under the book. And they actually believe that stuff. And by the way, Ben, great music. You stole it. I was going to play that for everybody. Alberta roots. But what I want to do is kind of inspire you guys to have conversations. And we've had many people come to events that I've held, and they said, well, what do I do? My coworker is not willing to talk to me. They don't want to hear what I have to say. My neighbor is upset with me because I put up an Alberta flag. Can you imagine? People are mad at the Alberta flag going up. The last time I saw that was during the convoy with the Canadian flag. A lot of Canadians said, ooh, these people are using the flag. It's our flag. We're now at the point where the flag is not okay. I posted a picture of 2 flags flying proudly in front of my place, and the amount of hate that was underneath that post was shocking. You ditch Billy. I don't live in a ditch. I don't know anybody who lives in a ditch. You redneck. Well, what's wrong with that? That means we're outside working. And if you're in Quebec, you got the Alberta dollars out there. So take the time to actually listen to people at this next stage. The time to preach is coming to an end. The time to listen and understand, it's now. And when they get through the emotional parts of their arguments, I love Canada. So do I. I'm proud of what we were. So was I. And I don't hate Canadians. That's not on my heart. In fact, I have a lot of pity for it. Because just today, it was announced that the seniors are getting reduced. Benefits to the seniors are being reduced. The Canadian debt is too high. So when people here say, well, what about my CPP and old age security? It's being cut. It's not staying to the inflation rate. You can't buy as much bread and milk. Carney's buying luxury butter. Did you guys see that? Wet ice, 112 euros for it? What is wet ice? And this is what he's doing with your money. So if I was a senior looking at this right now, I'd be wondering, can I afford butter? They're cutting everything. And this is something that I think Danielle Smith should be listening to right now, is the Alberta pension plan. It should be something that she brings forward. Even Kenny went around asking whether or not it was a fair deal, and he got the answer. How many people here watched that debate with Kenny and Wilson? Okay, those that didn't put up your hand, check it out. It's online, it's on YouTube, check it out. They actually weren't debating. They both said the exact same thing for the first 50 minutes. Alberta does not have a good deal. Ottawa is the problem. Regulations need to be removed. And we're absolutely being held back from the prosperity of Alberta. They both said that the first 50 minutes. The only place that they disagreed was the solution. Kenny said, and he said it many times, put your shoulder to the wheel. Dig in, keep fighting. Wilson said, let's create a plan and transition out. I'm with Wilson on that one. If you haven't learned yet, there's the Alberta Transition Council led by Keith Wilson and Dennis Kalama, who created the Value of Freedom, which is a financial document on what it would cost for us to get out of here. And it's not $400 billion, like the Premier said just the other day. It's very doable. But even at $400 billion, the future for our children is worth it. How many people in here are parents? How many of you knew what your child was going to be? How many children they were going to have? Were they going to be engineers, farmers, lawyers, politicians? How many of you knew what they were going to be? No hands are up. But we still have children because we're excited about bringing something new into the world and see where it grows. That's where we're at right now with Alberta. I used to call it a divorce from Canada, but we should be looking at it as a birth of a new nation. There's going to be a little bit of trauma for the mother and the child, but it's going to be great. And what will this little thing called Alberta become? I don't know. And that's what we're being honest about. Are we going to have a military? Are we going to work closely with the US and Canada? Are we going to have a different currency? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. Because the only certainty I have in my mind right now is the train that we're on right now is not good. Record debt, costing billions to service. Even security for seniors is being cut. Don't get me started on the vets. The people who said they laid down their lives to give us the freedom are some of the last to get a piece of the pie. That's not what I want to leave to my children. So I would encourage you all to go have conversations, listen to your neighbors, listen to your coworkers, let them speak. And when they get past the emotional part, and by the way, let them know you have the same emotions. We were all proud Canadians. But now we need to be proud parents of a new nation. So thank you all very much for taking the time. I really appreciate you all. Love you all very much. And God bless. I'm going to invite Chris Scott up. If you didn't catch the show this morning, he was on the show this morning with me. And by the way, if you don't know the Levine show, there's some cards in the hallway. You can go grab one of those and check out the show. We have Keith Wilson coming on. We have a whole bunch of people. Danielle Smith comes on the show. She'll be on in June. So if you want to hear some tough questions for her, June 30th, we're recording. July 1st, Canada Day. We're going to put her feet to the fire. Thank you all very much. Chris Scott.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the other speakers and presenters. I just want to make something really clear for everybody here tonight and everybody that's watching online. You know, Let's Talk Alberta doesn't exist to tell you what to do or convince you or tell you what way to vote on things. We're here because we want to have conversations about the things that are important to Albertans. And right now, we have some very important questions that are coming up that we're going to answer, right? Some of the questions that we're going to answer this fall are going to have lasting and very consequential outcomes. It's going to change this, it's going to change Alberta for the foreseeable future, for sure. These are questions and discussions that we haven't really had the opportunity to have in a mainstream setting before. And now they're coming, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter which side of this conversation you're on. You'll notice we had presenters who advocate for Alberta independence, for a free nation of Alberta. We have speakers who advocate for a sovereign Alberta. It's not that we all think the same and want to have the same path, but we all want to express our opinions because we care about the future of Alberta. I care deeply. I didn't really before. I mean, I cared, but it wasn't until something in my life changed, something happened to me that forced me to cast off my political apathy and my unwillingness to learn history, even what Canada is, what Alberta's part in it is, who I am, what my rights are, those types of things. Something had to happen to me to activate me, to move me from I'm not going to go to that whatever it is, Let's Talk Alberta or whatever event because there's a good show on TV. Instead, traveling the province on what Sheane lovingly refers to as the Let's See Alberta tour, because we really are seeing all of Alberta. But something happened to me that changed the way I think about my future, and specifically my kids' future. Because when I was at the point in my life where I was staring down the government, unaware, uneducated as to who I was in the government's eyes and vice versa, I realized that I wasn't equipped to make the decisions we needed to make in the future. I certainly wasn't equipped to teach my children, short of going to vote every 4 years. And so I understand why so many people aren't involved in things like this. They just haven't been in a way that makes them Well, now, and learning what my rights are, learning the history of Canada a little more, learning what our Constitution decided on what was in our Constitution, I came to some very startling conclusions. And my conclusions were reinforced with real world observations ever since then. I watched as my friends and my neighbors were forced to do things with their bodies that they didn't want to do because the government said they had to participate in society. I watched as, and I experienced what it's like to have to attend church services under the cover of darkness, because if the government found me, I would be arrested along with my fellow churchgoers. I felt what it meant to, literally, I felt the cold concrete that I was laying on in jail for the heinous crime of protesting what the government was doing to me and my peers, and doing so on property that I held the title to. I've experienced things that I never thought in a million years a Canadian would experience. And the sad part is, I'm not the first. There's thousands before me that experienced these things. You know, the issues that Alberta faces within Confederation, they are symptoms of a deeper disease. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, that disease is the result of political apathy. It's the result of a society, instead of a society coming together and saying, hey, we are going to self-determine. We are going to decide the guidelines and the boundaries that our government has to follow to govern us. We are going to decide what our government looks like, what our judiciary looks like, all of these things. We didn't do that. Somebody else did it, and they imposed it on the Dominion of Canada, and that was the British Crown. And that was the British North America Act, as most of you might already know. But I mention this because all of these things rattling around in my brain, trying to find some rationale and some logic behind it, have made me understand this truth. We don't exist in a structure that is specifically designed for us. We design in a structure that is designed for us to be peaceful, orderly, and have supposed good government. To be to be polite, not make waves, go along. And these things have culminated to some of the issues that I mentioned before. People being arrested for going to church, being arrested for protesting, people forced to take medical interventions that they did not want. And I'm sorry to report, many of you already know this fact, but a lot of those people aren't with us anymore. And we still haven't seen any apology or accountability from our government for that. And I'm not saying that to try and sling mud on the people involved in these things. I'm trying to explain that the problems we face as Albertans with the structure within Confederation that is not equitable to us, it's not the only thing that there is to be concerned about. But it is a thing in particular that's activated a lot of Albertans. And now they're paying attention and they have questions. Let's make it Alberta to get together and decide the rules for government, to write our own constitution. That's my remedy. To put in there things like property rights, which we don't have in Canada right now. Sorry to tell you that. To enshrine the sanctity of life. We have an opportunity before us in which we could do that. And it's going to take some work, but even more than the work, it's going to take a lot of conversation. But I think it's important, and I think it's appropriate to make some sacrifices to go through this process in the best way possible. And the best way we can do this as a society, as Albertans, is to talk about it. That's why Let's Talk Alberta exists. You've heard from speakers who are sharing their opinion on what path they believe we should take. Some say they want an independent nation of Alberta. Some say they want sovereign Alberta. You might disagree with those. And this is your opportunity to challenge us with what on the things that we say, to share your opinion. Specifically, I would invite you, and I know this is a difficult thing because it's mostly like-minded people here, but if you disagree with something we've said, or you're opposed to the idea of Alberta sovereignty, if you're opposed to the idea of, for the first time ever, the people actually deciding what the rules for government are, I really want to hear why. I want you to try and change my mind. I want you to talk to me. I'm so sick of this idea that if somebody disagrees with somebody else, the first thing we do is cancel them and don't let them speak. The idea that there are people actively campaigning against direct democracy in the form of a referendum is appalling to me. Imagine living in a country like Canada, which I'm very happy to be here. It's a blessing because we have the opportunity to speak our mind, even if our mind and our opinion is something so controversial as we need to remove ourselves from that. I'm blessed to be here, to have these conversations. And there are people that literally want to stop the conversation before it even starts. Now, to those people, I would ask, what if you're wrong? What if the best path forward is what your opponent is advocating for? What if a year down the road, something happens to you? Perhaps you're lying on a concrete slab in prison for protesting on your own property. Or perhaps you've been arrested for the crime of now denying something, speaking out against something. Did you know that that just passed in the Senate? What I'm referring to is the residential school denialism criminalization. Something happened back in 2015, and I believe one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetuated on the people of Canada went mainstream. We ended up with a prime minister that stood on the world stage and called Canada a genocidal country, responsible for the pain and suffering and genocide of people, and all these terrible things happened. And yes, terrible things happened all across history to all human beings. And we passed laws in this country that threaten not only personal and individual sovereignty, but our collective sovereignty. Our governments have subscribed to and allowed policy and mandates infiltrate our country from groups that are not accountable to us, that will never suffer the consequences of those policies and that legislation that's imposed on us. We've allowed that to happen. We've allowed the conversations to be hijacked. I've watched people trying to speak out against things that have been said in the mainstream that are untrue, spat on, shouted down, attacked, canceled. And now I watch the same thing happening to the people of Alberta, who simply want to decide. We want to be asked the question. If the majority of Alberta wants to self-determine and have Alberta sovereignty, who are the others to say that we can't have that question? And when did this become appropriate in a civilized society? As I sat back there listening to the other speakers, this is not what I wanted to talk about tonight. I had a completely different speech planned. It was earth-shattering and moving, and it would have changed all of the hearts and minds of everyone in Alberta, and we would have all moved towards the same goal collectively, but I couldn't remember what it was, but I assure you that's what it was. But as I think of these things, I speak from my heart. I don't have any notes. These aren't actually my notes. I'm speaking to you of my experiences and what I've learned up until this point. And some of these things I get very passionate about. And the more and more I think about Canada passing laws like criminalizing thought, criminalizing denying something. Those aren't my values. Those aren't my values. I do not necessarily believe that you're right about everything, and I do not necessarily share your views and your opinions, but I will fight for your right to express them. That's what this country is supposed to be. That's what old Canada was. The Canada before we started sacrificing the values that built a great nation and pursuing ideologies that threatened the sovereignty of the entire Dominion. I want that back. Some of you may be opposed to the idea of an independent Alberta. I totally understand. Some of you may have very deep patriotic and emotional ties to Canada, as do I. But my emotional ties that I have to Canada are to what I believed or what Canada was when I was a young man, young boy. When I started school, elementary school in Kamloops, BC, in the mid-80s, I guess, the Constitution had been freshly repatriated. We booted the bad Trudeau and returns a sense of normalcy to the country. Things were exciting. I listened to my fourth grade teacher, Mr. Ruda, who unfortunately we gave a heart attack because we were really, really nasty kids. I listened to him and I watched, didn't understand it at the time, but the excitement in his face and his tone when he talked about what it meant to live in Canada and the opportunity we had and how we would always be free and how we had this amazing Charter of Rights and Freedoms that enumerated what our rights were. I didn't realize until later that if the government enumerates your rights, it's implied that you don't have any others besides those. That's the Canada that I am attached to. And I don't believe that Canada exists anymore. However, there is hope. The more people realize that the things that we feel are wrong and the things that we see are wrong are solvable through conversation, the more we pursue the discussion and we talk to each other openly and boldly about these subjects, the greater chance we have at solving the problems. And I can tell you right now, when one person or group stands up boldly, unapologetically for what they believe in, and they become leaders, as Alberta may become a leader this October, that encourages and emboldens those around them. And it is not just me and you and other Albertans that feel this way about what Canada has become. This is a sea to shining sea problem. And Alberta has an opportunity not only for ourselves, we have an opportunity to lead and be an example to every other Canadian who wants to return to what Canada was. We have an opportunity to give them the courage to stand up against what the federal government wants to do, which in our Prime Minister's own words is to usher in the New World Order. What the hell is the New World Order, and what's wrong with the order we have right now that built this place, that created a nation that people, they left everything thousands of miles away, left their families, left their belongings, their riches, and they came here to endure harsh prairie winters for. And now people are leaving. I'm not against immigration. I'm against sacrificing the values and the principles that make this place attractive for people to come to. I hear stories all the time. My restaurant, I have vendors they're new Canadians. And it's the same thing all the time. They're pissed right off that Canadians have allowed this to happen. And the freedom and opportunity that they came here for is diminishing before their very eyes. They're sitting in ERs. They're watching on the news as their fellow countrymen are dying in ERs in a country with this world-class healthcare, with this universal free healthcare that we should all protect at all costs, while people are dying waiting for service. And they're mad because Canadians have failed to protect what they had. That's why this conversation is so important. This has nothing to do with the pipeline. It has nothing to do with taxes, although I would like to pay less taxes. It has nothing to do with any of that. It is precisely the opportunity to be leaders, the opportunity to do something that's never been done in this country before and return to the values that we used to admire. And I'm very, very excited to be part of it. Well, here comes the fun part. In order to do this, to do these events, Let's Talk Alberta, we need to raise money. That's important. Correct? We don't get paid. We don't have $100 glasses of orange juice. We don't have fancy butter even, although I am very interested in that. And if anyone has any information on the fancy butter, I'm all ears. So we're going to bring these fancy yellow buckets and we're going to pass them around just like we're in church. And if you can, please consider helping us out to do this. We have another, how many events do we have left, Shane? About 165 events left to do. Each event is roughly, give or take, about $2,000 to do, and we don't take a wage. This is all grassroots funded. I don't get any money from Donald Trump, although if anybody has his direct number, I mean, I'm just kidding. We're not funded by the government. We don't have benefactors. Everything we do is all from you folks. So if you appreciate what we're doing, please consider helping us do it.
You take debit.
Debit, IOUs, you name it. Yeah, we can do that. It always sucks to have to bring that up, but it's a reality, you know. So I'll close with this. I don't want people to think of Alberta standing up for themselves as leaving something, tearing something apart. This is an opportunity to grow up. It's an opportunity to build something for ourselves for the first time and to be leaders in doing so. And it is a very emotional thing. But I hope that at the very least, you folks will join me in doing what we should have been doing all along and talking to each other. So let's talk, Alberta. Thank you very much. Did you like how I worked in the name of the thing? Let's talk. You caught that? Okay, good. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute break. It's always closer to a 10-minute break. There's some cookies and coffee at the back. And stretch your legs. We're going to come back. We'll do a Q&A. And I implore you, if you disagree with anything I've said, I would invite you to the front of the line. Please share what's on your heart, what's on your mind, and we want to talk about it with you. See you in 10 minutes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started with the Q&A. Oh man, that makes my head boom. While we're waiting for the speakers to come to the front, I'm going to ask a huge favor of everybody. We have a real problem with the algorithms. We have people telling us they get the posters 3 to 4 days, even later, after an event has actually occurred when it comes through on social media. So I'm going to ask that you help me do the shampoo method. How many people remember the Clairol shampoos from the 70s and 80s? You tell 2 friends and they'll tell 2 friends and so on and so on. Well, I'm going to get your help doing that principle with our posters. So if you could go to letstalkalberta.com, the Whistle Stop Cafe's webpage, the Let's Talk Alberta's Facebook page, and freedomcalendar.net. Any one of those sites, you'll find our upcoming posters. Download those posters and send them to people that you know in the area that's occurred, and ask them to send them out to 2 friends, and ask them to tell their 2 friends to send them out to 2 friends. And if we do that, we should always have a full hall. So if you could do that, that would be greatly appreciated. Now, I'm waiting on the speakers to get up here. We just had 2 of them up here and they disappeared on me. Yeah, he's back there. And we're waiting on Chris. Oh, now he turns around and leaves again. There, you now heard me for the first and only time tonight. I'm going to go back and nurse my headache.
Folks, that's Sheane Meikle. Sheane is our boss. He's the guy who kind of tries to...
Bonnie's the boss. Bonnie's the boss.
Well,
Yeah.
we do know that, but... Oh, do you want to let people know how to do this?
Well, it's a Q&A, so it's straightforward. You ask a question and we'll give you an answer. There's a microphone set up over there. Please go to the microphone with your questions, because there's a little wireless mic on there that's making it so that the people in inner tube land, as Ben would call it, can hear. Yeah, and if you have a question, just wander up to the mic and yeah.
Can we please, oh, is this on?
Or you want
Okay.
yours? Okay.
Can we please, while we are doing our best to redefine a sovereign Alberta, don't turn a,
Hang on, we're trying to get this figured. That's as high as it goes.
needs to be high.
Just get closer to me. There, yeah. Just let me do a little test on it again because it wasn't on.
Do I have to start over? Now we hear? Is that good? So please, while we're trying to redefine Alberta and find our way, do not turn a blind eye to the data centers and the geoengineering that are doing the farmers an incredible amount of damage right now. If you want to eat, we have to keep our eye on that too.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Segestiguan, or Messy Hair with in Cree, and I'm Indigenous Métis. Very proud. My family, the white side, came here in the 1790s. The Trudeau stopped off over there in Montreal. My family kept on going. The difference between our family is we were actually Huguenot. The king ordered that all Protestants be executed, and we got the hell out of France. So we interbred with the Indigenous community, and now we formed a community and a country, and we had our own monetary system. A lot of people don't know that. The Alberta Monetary Authority has resurrected a currency we called the Made Beaver, and it was in 1820 was the first mintage of the coinage, and that's very interesting for anybody to look into. Jacques Larondale, I don't know if you guys ever seen the Canadian silver canoe? There's a man on the back seat of the canoe. That's my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Jacques Larondel, or Chief, wanted to. I've stood in Batage, and I've actually seen, we've been here before. Albertans have been here before. We've been fighting for freedom from the colonial tyrants for a long, long time. I don't have a chance. My family's always done it. My grandfather taught me that if the government tells you to plant peas, plant oats. So that's led me through a lot of hardship in my life. And you know, when they're telling you get the vaccine, well, is that peas or oats? So I'm getting to my question. I just need to give you guys some quick background here. So me being a Canadian, I was proud at one time of Canada as well. I was proud of being in Canada and part of Canada, and I didn't know my roots at that point. And I didn't understand, as Scott was saying, or Chris was saying, we just didn't know. We didn't know where we were, what we are, and that's by design. So I was wandering around December 20th, 2012. My government told me that I'm lazy, entitled, and I won't work for the money that I am offered. And then they flew over 800 Koreans, and temporary foreign workers started coming into Alberta, and I was homeless for 3 years. Not because I was a crackhead, not because I was an alcoholic, but because I couldn't find a job. So, me being the industrious, hardworking man that I am, I just kept keeping on. I put a backpack on. I was walking around downtown Edmonton, had some crazy adventures I don't have time to get into. One day I found myself walking beside Thomas Mulcair. That was interesting. Just so you know, when you are Métis or you're a tall white man, and you're looking for that handout, the welfare check, you're not going to get one because it's not for you. I stood in the welfare line 3 times in 989 days, and there was 8 Somalians each time in front of me, and they all got $1,800 a month, more money. They got $400 more than our war veterans were getting at the time, and I found that to be disgusting, and that's what Canada offered me. They gave me a bus ticket, an Edmonton transit ticket, so I could just cross the city and F off, I suppose. So anyways, that's enough. I've been working with so when I started the Alberta Monetary Authority in 2010, it's led me down some crazy paths as well. I got to meet very high-end leaders in the Indigenous community. And I'm going to drop names tonight so you can look it up yourself. And Cree Energy, oil and gas. I've been working with them for 16 years. And they have never been able to raise any money to flow their own oil to benefit their own people. And that is a sick tragedy. These people are languishing. And the fact of the matter is, we make contracts, we have agreements, we have understandings. When the dollar comes to get into our bank account, Canada itself stops it and says no. Indians can't flow oil. And that's a fact. I can prove it. Cree Energy Oil and Gas is the only Indigenous oil and gas company in Alberta that has the right to buy, sell, or trade oil. You can look them up in the Alberta Energy Regulator if you would like to. So anyways, my question to you is, can Indigenous people sell the resources under their feet? Thank you.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So you are an Indigenous man? And what do you feel about this event tonight?
I love it. I got the hat.
Okay.
So I want to be able to bring this to the people, the real people. There's a tear in the Indigenous community. There's those that are bought and paid for. And then there's those that are the single mother on reserve. She could be benefited by the crude oil under her feet, but she's not.
Okay, so Chris, you've consulted Indigenous now, and you can continue this event, just to be clear. We've now consulted the Indigenous community. The question that you ask is a very tough one because the 1930 Alberta Resources Act provided that Alberta owns the oil and the resources under the ground. The Indian Act and the treaties say any land that's underneath the reserves is administered by the federal government. And I think I had Darren Grimes on my show, and we talked about this a bit. And he said for his community, because he's an Indigenous man as well, he said in 158 years, we haven't had the opportunity of self-determination until now. And this is why 46% of that community supports the idea of self-determination in October, and only 41% it says stay. It's the Indigenous elite, so the chiefs and the lawyers and the politicians that support that system, who is actually lying to you and saying that there is no support there. So I'm really glad that you're here tonight. Let's give them a hand. Because one of the conversations that we always are open to is with our Indigenous neighbors, because quite frankly, we think no two-tiered system is going to work for anybody. We're all going to be treated equal under the law and under God, and make sure that we treat each other properly. And I think one of the best things about this conversation is the prospect of that actually happening. So God bless you. Thank you for being here.
So that brings me to my second question. So the Crown, you know, they came over here and they placed this thing over the land. My mom is here. She's over there. Hi, Mom. And she was saying that there was an old lady. She was at our, she can tell the story better than I. But they just put land over top of dirt. And the Indigenous don't believe that you can own air, water, or dirt. And and even the Brits and the colonial laws before kings, there was this thing called curtilage, where your house was your house, and it was castle doctrine, and I believe in that. I believe that you should have as much land as you need to take care of your family. You build a chicken coop, that chicken coop is yours. You build a garden, the garden is yours. You put a fence around your property, that is your property. But the dirt belongs to God. In the Indigenous law, in Indigenous understanding, God owns the dirt. And that's a beautiful thing, because we had this guy with a golden crown come on his head and, oh, I own everything. And we put this flag here, and that means I own everything. I own the sun and the moon and the stars. And now they're trying to convince us that you can own water. Oh, you can own, and who owns the water? Well, it's not you. You don't own water. Nestle owns the water. And what about the air? Well, let's have carbon tax. That's air, right? So these colonials are always trying to convince the people, we the people, that you can commoditize something. Let's commoditize earth, and let's commoditize water and air, and sell it back to the people at a profit. So it's not really a question. That's just continuing this conversation. But my question is, I guess to Chris, I know you've dug deep into this. So I just wanted to challenge you a little bit deeper. You found out that you were a tenant on the land, probably, which means that the Crown owns the land, and now before I ask the question, I believe that there's three types of people now. There's the Indigenous understanding, which was the common law, and the Indigenous understanding where dirt belongs to God. We just live here until we die, and then your house rots and falls in the dirt and goes back to God. And then there's the king. The king owns everything, and you just pay your taxes. And now we have these new people who are Indigenous that believe that the king give us dirt so that we can kick people out of their homes. So it's getting to be, people are very angsty. And I think that we can garner super strength from returning the land back to God. It says in Samuel, they were like, give us a king. And well, we have a king. How about we get rid of the king, give the dirt back to God, and just live in peace, prosperity, and happiness? What do you think about that, Chris?
Well, that's a pretty deep philosophical question, really. We live in a world where property and ownership kind of rule most of society. And, you are correct when you say that we don't really own anything. That's true. You don't actually, if you have a mortgage on your house and you have the deed to your house, you don't actually own that house. And if you don't believe me, just don't pay your property tax and see what happens, right? Canada doesn't have property tax. We have lots of property tax. We don't have property rights enshrined in our Constitution. It's not there. It's nowhere to be found. And the reason for that seems to me like we just kind of inherited this feudal system where the king or the sovereign holds all of the land in trust for us. And we get the privilege of being able to own that piece of land within the confines of that system, right? And that's why the government was able to come to my business and put a chain on the door and just take it, because I lost the privilege of the ownership, of the stewardship of that property. I think this is an opportunity that Alberta has to be a leader in Canada again, by the people saying, no, we are going to own this. We will be able to protect it. This is what we're going to give our children. We're going to work hard. We're going to build these places up, and we're going to pass it on to the next generation. And no, you're not going to tax our children on what we give them of our blood, sweat, and tears, right? So, you know, a lot of that, it's a little deeper than I get into. I will say that I also believe that, well, no, not believe. I know that Alberta sovereignty is probably the greatest opportunity that First Nations people have had to change the status quo for themselves as well, and even more so than non-First Nations people. If you look at the stats as to how the status quo has treated First Nations people in Canada, it's absolutely pathetically disgusting. In some of the worst cases in reserves in Canada, a First Nations man will live in up to an average of 19 years less than a non-First Nations man. And that alone is enough to make anybody at least pause and think, okay, what is it about the current system that imposes these kind of statistics on those people? Why is it that First Nations people make up, I think it's 6 or 7% of the population, but they're 54% of incarcerated people? Why is it that First Nations youth are 4 times more likely to commit suicide? Like, there are some very, very serious issues here. And it actually makes me a lot angry at people who are advocating for this status quo, because the question I want to ask them is, if you're advocating for this status quo for our First Nations brothers and sisters, why do you hate them? Like, why wouldn't you want an improvement over what we see now? And these are all statistics that I didn't know until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. This is all new to me. Did you folks know some of those statistics? They're terrible. So I took some time. I wrote a blog, more like an essay. It's called Why First Nations Would Benefit from, or the Most in an Independent Alberta. And you can find that at whistlestoptruckstop.ca. There's another accompanying essay I did, and the title of it is Treaties Were Meant to Free People. They weren't meant to enslave or chain people in the manner that they have. And I think that we have an incredible opportunity to not only do something for Albertans as a whole, but specifically to do something to break the chains that our First Nations brothers and sisters find themselves bound in today.
Yeah, so the treaty, or when the First Nations are placed under the Indian Act, they become wards of state. So the way that I see it is, they will gain status as human beings in Alberta, because right now they're just wards of the Canadian state, and the Canadian state has failed them so incredibly miserably, it breaks my heart. And we need to elevate all of us to have one vote, one man, one person, one human, and just start, living in prosperity, health, and happiness, and we can all partake in the wealth together.
I agree.
Yeah. I would add on that in Quebec, where there's no treaties, the first move that the independence movement did in 1976 was to recognize the full sovereignty of the First Nation on its territory. And I can tell you that the result, again, like 50 years later, is that the Cree Nation up north, it's a powerhouse in economic activities for Quebec. They control, they have the largest construction company in Quebec. They control the largest network of fiber optic. They control, it's absolutely like a powerhouse. So I believe that it starts by recognizing that even under the treaty, that they should have the right to manage their land that are under a treaty. They should have the right to own their properties, which they don't right now on reserve. And they should have the right to transact and have the same rights as we do.
Don't be shy. There you go.
Hi, my name's Donnie. I live in Edmonton. And thanks. Well, the trees in Edmonton all bend south because that's how Calgary sucks, right? So anyways, I've been, my history is I got thrown out of Pierre Poilievre's rally at the Nisku for wearing my Make Canada Great Again hat. I had 4 hats like that made up when Trump got elected. It wasn't because I was in love with Trump. I was in love with the idea of the people rising up and throwing out the status quo and the corruption, and I'm really for that. And I've been, and since I got thrown out, I threw that hat in the corner of my house, and I wear this hat now.
And what does your hat say?
Republic of Alberta, and I started making up the banners. I think you bought one or two of me, the Alberta Sovereignty now. Anyways, I'm really passionate about the whole thing, but I'm worried about a few things, and I fight on because I believe that as long as we have this conversation and drive this conversation as much as we can, we're going to come out much better for it than if we stood back and did nothing. So that's why I press on. But I have concerns about a few things. One is, if you're familiar with Doug Force, passed away, Doug Force and Tim Stein, and they did Canada the Illusion. And I ask you, Mr. Trudeau, do we have a constitution in Canada? I don't think we do. And Quebec never ratified it. And it was every province in Canada, the Westminster Act, every province in Canada is sovereign. And we are not even part of a constitution. So we should just take our province and do what we want. I'll go sit down. I might come back, but I'll sit down and listen to your response. Thank you.
Oh, well, I believe that, you're right that Quebec never signed the Constitution. More than that, Quebec has applied over 1,500 times the notwithstanding clause. On all their laws, all laws in Quebec, even like the B Act, had the notwithstanding clause from 1981 to 1985 while the PQ was there. There's a rule which is called an estopel. An estopel is when you continue practicing under a law despite the law not being ratified. So there's other rules of law that makes us, because we kept on running under the Constitution, we basically kind of acknowledge that the Constitution is in power. So we have to look at that, but at the same time, we have a very recent, I think it's last year, that Bermuda got their independence. Jamaica and and that lays from the 1931 Westminster Act, which is still there for us to grab. But again, I believe that instead of going in legal battles to start doing stuff, we need to do more concrete action just to piss off Ottawa.
I never get tired of hearing Ben say that. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. I just want to say, I'm familiar with Doug Force's work. I find it very intriguing and interesting. I'm not 100% convinced that he was correct in everything. However, it is an interesting concept. The one thing that I think he erred on, and I think a lot of people maybe get confused on, is the Land and Resources Transfer Act. Like I believe it's a misconception that people that say that gave sovereignty, that gave jurisdictional control over resources and land, which wasn't the same as sovereignty. And I understand how some people might interpret it differently than me, and that's okay. But the point of this whole thing is there are many different nuanced law issues like this, jurisdiction, sovereignty, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it actually comes back to one thing, and that's what you can enforce. Okay? So right now, the vast majority of Canada, I would say 43,900,000 plus, they believe that the system we have is legitimate. They vote to elect people who make laws. Those people make laws. They change the judiciary. We appoint judges. Those judges interpret these laws. They also have control of the RCMP, the guys with the guns that come to your restaurant, put a chain on the door, and they have the courts and the jails and all of these things. So they are interesting concepts, but there's no way by which we could enforce an alternative interpretation of it. And we're kind of stuck in the system that's enforced on us right now. So there may be some validity to it, and it is certainly interesting to me, but I believe there's a different and a more plausible and probable path to achieving the outcome that we need, and that outcome is the will of the people manifesting in a successful referendum on Alberta independence.
I echo a lot of what Chris just said there, but I think something that's a little bit more important than a document that may or may not have been ratified in 1931 is the fact that we live in a judicial system, just to get that word out, nice and easy, that's appointed and thrusted upon us. So we don't elect our judges, they're appointed. So Supreme Court is for life. We've actually allowed this system to kind of take over our world, and we live within it right now. So regardless of what happened in 1931 or 1980, 1982, et cetera, we live under this system where the people who have the guns also have the judges, and they all get paychecks from the same place. So as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the number two. Indigenous rights is number one for me, but number two is a judicial system where we actually get out from that particular system. Although Ben does mention that we can do some constitutional powers and try and fight back and maybe elect senators or get some judges or something like that, I think the entire system is stacked against us. So no matter who ratified what, when, where, why, I think this is our opportunity to do a new one with a new constitution and start all over on that one, specifically because that system doesn't work and it's been proven to not work for us anymore.
Yeah, and for the first time, you and I will actually have a chance to have a say about that. That's what's been floated around, is they want to have constitutional talks, town halls, where if you're interested and have a point of view and want to be heard, there again, it's time to get off the chair.
Hello, I'm back. Yeah, I've done a lot of history, as you can tell, and so I guess let's delve deep into treaty process. This all is irrelevant. Everything is completely 100% relevant if treaties are irrelevant. And we had a nation of people who believed that king owns dirt, and then we had these people just living their lives, and then they had these papers rolled out before them in a treaty, and it was all drafted up in a different language. And it was all just smoke and mirrors. And then we have these people that are just like, hey, just sign here and here's some free things. And they're like, oh, if I give you all of Canada, I get free stuff? Like, hello? Everybody sign that because, nobody can own dirt. That's a big joke, right? Well, these people signed this, and now all of a sudden they were not joking. And like you said, they have courts, they have police, and they have guns, and they use them to 1986, even here in Alberta, Fort McMurray, they bulldozed Moccasin Flats. People don't even know that. It's like Fort McMurray, like why do they bulldoze the people's homes down? So I think that, yeah, if you have a treaty and it's not in both languages, it's written in one language, and it's not understood, and you have two entirely different platforms and understanding of land ownership. The Indigenous have no contention with you owning a fence post and pounding that in the ground, and that's your fence post, and you can defend that post, and that's yours. That's what totem poles were actually about. They rot, they fall back down into the dirt, it goes back to God. That's a very strong property ownership understanding is, when you're living in your house, that is your castle. That is your place to defend. And I think and now we have these people in Richmond, they're terrified. Oh, the Indians are going to take my house. Well, if those Indians take the house, they're breaking their own law under the Creator. because you sweat, you bled for that home, and that's yours. The dirt, well, we'll leave that for questioning, as this process goes on. But let's keep this question going. Got to ask it. It has to be asked. If we want the Indigenous on side, if we want to break that 46% or whatever it is, this question needs to be answered. We got to, Albertans need to come to the understanding that this is actually in their best interest to wrest this authority from the crown, give it back to the people, give it back to God, where it comes from.
I'm going to offer you another perspective, and this isn't a popular one, and I never even thought of this until probably 2 or 3 years ago. I don't believe that the treaties were signed in a manner that was meant to subjugate. When the West was settled, there were people here. I can't remember how many different nations. Somebody can tell me if they want. And they had experienced some pretty difficult things. One of the major things that happened, and this actually, I learned this on Vancouver Island in the museum as I was reading one of the explorers' logbooks from exploring the West Coast. Do you folks know what disease did to the North American Indians between 1600s and the time we settled the West? There's an estimation, and there's no way of knowing what it actually is. There's an estimation that somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% of people died from disease, from 1600s, from the time of the settling in the United States until we started settling central Canada. So it wasn't all roses. It wasn't a utopian paradise that some would have you believe. There were nomadic tribes experiencing extreme hardships, declining food supply, a changing world. And there were people that saw these folks as human beings and wanted to help them legitimately. You mentioned the language thing. There are people, one of them very famous from in this area, Father Lacombe, took the time to learn the language of the people who were here so that they could effectively communicate with them and help. And yeah, part of it was to share the gospel, but the other part was to help them through the transition from old world into what the world was becoming. The conversations, and you can read this. Clifford Sifton records some of this in his memoirs. I'm thinking of some things specifically out of Volume 2, The Lonely Eminence. You'll find this stuff in there. But they describe some of the conversations with the leaders of the time. They were a means by which to help the people persevere through the hardship that they were experiencing. They didn't want to go the path of what the United States did, and that was terrible. They had bounties, Indian bounties, like you literally got paid to clear out Indians from the land. That's how bad it was. The Crown, if you read what the Crown had said pre-treaty, they said things like, the Queen, this is going to sound odd, but it stuck with me just because of how odd it was. The Queen's bosom is big enough for all peoples, including Her Majesty's Indians. Saying, hey, we can help you folks, we can help sustain you, and you'll become my people, and we'll take care of you. And then there were people in the church, they built hospitals, and they built schools, and they did these things. And a lot of the First Nations people at the time, they wanted to be able to integrate because the world was changing, and they wanted to learn. Not all did, certainly not perfect. There was many people who tyrannized and oppressed and did unspeakable things to other human beings. But I believe that the spirit of the treaties was meant to free people from famine and wars and all sorts of hardship that they were experiencing at the time. What changed was when government got their hands on it. And government created the Indian Act. And they put people in cages. The reserve idea was meant to have a place where First Nations people could be not interfered with. They could maintain their culture, do their thing. They were given, or the idea was that they would be given seeds and learn farming techniques so that they could sustain. Then the Indian Act kind of like chained people to the reserves, and we see the consequences of those. And I'm sorry if I'm not articulating this in the most effective way. It's not easy for me to talk about this because a lot of the things that I'm saying go completely against mainstream narrative. And now I might even go to jail for this, apparently. But I'm saying this to point out that I do not believe that the intention of the treaties that we have right now was meant to shackle and chain people and subjugate them in the conditions they are now. I believe that was a mistake that government made and through legislation. And I believe that if we see a problem like that and it's a legislative problem, we have a duty and an obligation to advocate for the change. And this could be the change.
So I have two questions. First, we are going to draft a new constitution for an independent Alberta eventually. Is there a move to have a formula for writing that constitution? And the other question is, are we going to push in the new constitution for individual rights as opposed to group rights? So in other words, if a bunch of people come here from France, they gather with French people so they've got a louder voice. That shouldn't be necessary. If you have individual rights, you shouldn't need a louder voice. You can stand on your own. Does that make sense rather than group rights?
So to answer that question directly, there's several people drafting constitutions, and there's going to be a constitutional convention at one stage where all these ideas come together, all the different parties come together to hash it out. This is how every constitution's been developed over the years. I just did an episode with Bruce Party, Dennis Kelma, and Matthew Rowley, who had three different ideas about the future, very different ideas. Matthew Rowley said, let's go back to the Commonwealth, the correct Commonwealth, not the one that you recognize today, but the one before the Constitution screwed it up under Trudeau. He laid out a bit of an argument there. Not very popular, I'll be honest with you. That particular word is not very popular. Dennis Kelmar, he is talking about a US-style constitution where the rights come first and you have a Bill of Rights and all that kind of stuff laid out, very republic-centric. And then Bruce Party had a new type of constitution, which is called flip the default. So if you look at the way constitutions are written today, it's an all-powerful government that hands certain rights to the people. So a Bill of Rights or a charter. So basically all the constitutions in the world work this way right now, where the government has all the power, except these things that they list off in the document that gives you some rights. He totally reverses that, where the government has no power at all. And then you make the exceptions of what they do have. So protect the borders, make sure that you can't force people to do anything. And that's about it. There's not much more going on in his constitution. Now, there's going to be a continued conversation around that. The Alberta Transition Council is going to be talking about some of this as well. But to directly answer your question, there's multiple people that are bringing forward these drafts. Even the Swiss style, which is direct democracy, where there's a lot more referendums involved in their democracy. It's decentralized. And here's what I really like about what we have as an opportunity as Alberta. We get to look around the world and see what works and doesn't work. What does work in the US system? What doesn't work? It's a two-party system, first past the post. In that kind of system, you're going to get corruption. In Canada, we went through, and it's something I push back on Rowley or Matt on. They now know how to corrupt that system. So even if it was a good system before the Commonwealth, it's corruptible. We just watched that happen during the 80s and all the way to now. So let's learn from all those lessons and bring something forward. But the best part of this is Albertans will have to ratify it, which means you guys are going to have to agree to it. So there's going to be a lot of conversations with all the stakeholders to get this done and come up with a new one. I hope we're bold enough to be radical enough to make something very different, even the world hasn't seen before, so we can become the template for many other jurisdictions around the world, not just here in Alberta, but maybe Saskatchewan picks it up, northern BC, Quebec, and then other nations across the world may pick it up as well. I hope we're bold enough to do that.
So I guess what I'm asking is for precision. People can agree as a group that they like everything they heard here tonight, right? But by the time the people drafting, say the Constitution, have finished putting it in legalese, it won't be what we voted on or what we liked. And the other part of that is that the English language can have 10 definitions for one term. So what I would like to see is a formula saying, you know, pick a language to write the Constitution in.
English.
Declare it, okay? Then pick a dictionary and Name the edition, the year of publication, make it official, and state emphatically that all the words in this Constitution come from this document. And then to further simplify it, state only the first listed definition for each term will apply, and then lawyers can't argue about it 300 years down the road. Everybody can read it and understand it. Does that make sense?
I love your optimism,
Thank you.
but on a practicality level, no matter what you do, even if you put it into stone, somewhere down the line, someone's going to find a way to pervert it. So it doesn't sound like that anymore. We've seen this happen, even with the definition of what a woman is. Okay, that should be really easy, but
Good luck.
yeah, good luck, right?
Here's a question for you folks. We hear questions about what an Alberta Constitution could be all the time. I'm going to ask you a question here. How many people have read the Canadian Constitution in its entirety? This is the supreme law of Canada, the country, the nation in which you inhabit. And very few of us, less than 1% of Canadians, estimated, have read the most important document in Canada. Well, that may be true. It may be written in a way that it's foreign to some of us. However, we have the capability to learn. We can read these things and we can understand them if we want to take the time to do so. This is what I was getting at before. How we are experiencing problems now. It's not only because there are tyrants who want to oppress and abuse and things like that and enrich themselves off our backs. It's also because we have failed to perform our basic civic duties in at least understanding the laws and the rules that govern us. So when anybody asks about the Constitution, now I say, hey, this is the opportunity we have. Now that you're activated, now that you're asking questions, you get to read the Constitution. You get to decide, what do you like in there? What do you dislike? And then you can think about other nations that you've traveled to, you've heard about or whatever. And, oh, you know what? Norway seems great. What does their Constitution look like? The United States is the greatest experiment in freedom the world has ever seen, sustaining for 250 years this year. How did they do it? Read their Constitution. This is the opportunity we have. And it's necessary. Because, should this question, this path go in the direction of Alberta sovereignty, you will have the opportunity to participate in constitutional conventions. And you must know what a constitution is, what works and what doesn't. If you don't, if you're confused, you will lose. You will go into that conversation not knowing what to ask for, not knowing what to advocate for, and the outcome will not be in your best interest.
We have a question, and it is, what is your response to a recent statement from Danielle Smith that seems to deliberately intend to instill fear about the high cost of Alberta's independence? She suggested a number of $400 billion.
I am so glad you brought that up. The reason I'm so glad is because I am a capitalist, and I am an entrepreneur. And I run a business, and my business has a web page, and I want everybody to visit my business's web page because I have overpriced merch there that you may or may not like. I would encourage you to buy it anyway. It also tells you about my restaurant, which I want you to visit because I enjoy running a business. I also use that web page for my advocacy, and I write blogs from time to time, and the blogs end up somewhat of essays because they just go a lot longer than I thought. I watched Danielle Smith talk about this $400 billion arbitrary at best number that she claims will cost to start a new nation. My first thought is, it's worth it. Yeah. My second thought is, wait a minute, she's talking about the cost, but she's only telling us half the story. What about the other side of the ledger? What about the things that we gain? These politicians are always telling us what you're going to lose, what it's going to cost you. They don't tell you what we're going to gain. So I spent some time this morning. I wrote another essay. I wrote a blog. It's called Show Me the Other Side of the Bill. Show me the other side of the invoice. And I explain it. I break down what Alberta pays right now, what we could save. I'm very honest and open about where I think that it's going to cost money and where it's going to be difficult. But I would encourage you to read that. It's at whistlestoptruckstop.ca/blog. And somewhere, I guess it will be the first one, and it's probably on the main page. Read that essay. And then that'll help you get a little bit of an understanding about what politicians do when they're campaigning. And she said she's going to campaign against Alberta sovereignty. Well, I'm going to challenge her on all of these things because what she did is fear-mongering. Yeah. And while I admire her and I respect her for some other things that she's done, she is acting contrary to what I believe is the right thing in this case. And I will do everything I can to point it out at every opportunity. So whistlestoptruckstop.ca/blog. Check it out and drop me a comment. Let me know what you think.
I just quickly, like we do know that we leave about 30 billion a year on the table to Ottawa. Again, just like financially speaking, even if it would cost 400 billion, the amortization is less than 15 years at 30 billion that we get back. I'm sure that most of you have mortgage that are longer than that. So even at 400 billion a year, that's great. That's a great price to amortize in 15 years to get control of our stuff.
But I'll add, one of the cases, and I make this case in that essay, is that it might not be that. It might actually work out in Alberta's favor because they talk about, oh, well, what about your share of the national debt? Okay, what about our 1/10 share in every federal asset? Oh, well, what about the military bases? Okay, what about our $343 billion you owe us for our share of the pension plan? Yeah. So it may actually work out with a good negotiating team. Unfortunately, now I don't believe that Danielle would be great at that. However, she could surprise me. Alberta might actually come out better than zero.
So I got an offer for some of you guys. Who wants to give me $400 for $20,000 worth of raw materials and resources? 400 billion? Chump change, folks. I think that's quite worth the price of freedom. But Alberta has proven we got 158.9 billion barrels in the oil sand. If you use the current price of oil and put it into Canadian terms, it's $21.1 trillion. And that's undeveloped. It's certainly something that we should be taking a look at. Some more big numbers for you. The Royal Bank of Canada said Canada squandered $1 trillion worth of investments over the last 10 years. And Alberta's share of that was $500 billion. Over 10 years of lost investment in our economy. These numbers are real. So as far as I'm concerned, where do we sign? $400 billion sounds quite the bargain to have a nation and our freedom from here on out. So let's do it. Show me the numbers. She's going to do that in August. Let's take a closer look at that. And as being Albertans, my wife's a haggler. We can probably get it down to 300. I'm sure we can work it out.
Hi, my name is Josiah. I'm here to ask a question for my brother. He is wondering if Alberta separates and then an anti-Alberta sovereignty government were to get voted in, even without a popular vote, would they have the ability to reverse the referendum results and rejoin Canada?
No. So how do an anti-sovereign Albertan government get in without the majority vote? Well, we'll just start right there. Some of the arguments that I've heard that I think are hilarious is Kenny, he said Edmonton and Calgary are going to separate from Alberta if you guys do that. Let's do the math. Though, if a majority of Albertans say yes to sovereignty and to leave Canada, that means a large portion of both Edmonton and Calgary also voted yes. You don't get to a majority vote without the city's involvement. So they're presuming that all the city's votes are owed to the leave or the stay side. Remember when Biden said on TV, you ain't black if you don't vote Democrat? Because they have this mentality that they own the vote and you have to vote a certain way. I've spoken to many in Edmonton and Calgary who are absolutely looking forward to the opportunity of self-determination. So don't let them scare you that way. And there has been a promise, or they call it a threat, but I think it's one of the best things I've heard in a long time. They said a lot of them will leave if Alberta becomes sovereign, them being the left. All righty, like I was sold already. Like don't push me faster on this one. But I can't see that scenario happening. But no, under the Referendum Act, and if it's under the Citizens Initiative Act, it's binding. And under the Clarity Act and the Supreme Court decision, the conversations, once it starts, it ends in secession. And if it's not done in good faith, according to the Supreme Court, Section 103 and 104, check it out. It's a really long document, but it's interesting. The Supreme Court recognized that if some of the parties, like the federal government or other provinces, do not negotiate in good faith, Alberta would be recognized by the international community under a Declaration of Independence. So this is a big stick to the government to go ahead and negotiate in good faith, because if they don't, we have a plan B, which is to go ahead and declare it, be recognized, and get started on our own without a deal with Canada and the other provinces. And that's in the Supreme Court decision, section 103, 104, if you guys want to check it out.
My name is Dwight. I'm sorry you're still in Edmonton, but thank you for coming. I moved to the county in end of January this year. Not a question, but a statement. Talking to other people and trying to get them to come over to the free Alberta side, it's very, it's a tough chat. For me, the main reasons for wanting to go are the loss of freedoms through through the federal government, the Bill C9 presently that's there, C22, C8, I could go on a long list. So I'm wondering if you could put that, if it's put on a site somewhere where it's accessible, I could pull it out of my jacket because I can't remember them all. But it's really, it's our loss of freedoms, which we experienced during the big C issue in 2020, 2021, 2021, 2022, 2021, Freedom Convoy, those inability to travel, inability to eat in a restaurant unless you had special ID. So I just suggest we could print up a list. John Carpe does a good job now and then of saying, here's what's happening in Canada, but most people are so unaware that they don't understand. You've got one? Thank you.
Your timing is impeccable.
Appreciate and thank you.
And to be clear, by my count, we violated C9 about 12 times tonight, especially when we did that prayer at the beginning. And I'm half joking, but a lot of the stuff that we're talking about would be considered to be illegal if that kind of thing goes through. And then with C22, they can go into your text messages and see what you're talking about. And it's a big cast for all Canadians, not the criminals, because the criminals are not on Facebook using DMs to talk to each other about breaking the law. They do other things that the government's not even trying to crack. They actually want to make sure that you guys are not talking bad about the government. So when the public minister comes out, a public safety minister comes out, we should change his name because he's actually the government safety minister. The reason why he's doing this is to protect the government from you guys. So yeah, we violated about 12 times tonight, so I'll see you in the gulag later.
Take me away. C9 is at the Senate now, as I understand.
We'll be in good company, I think. So, no, you're not on the top bunk. No, we're not going through that again, Ben. That trifold that Shane just gave you, that's one of the initiatives that Let's Talk Alberta is doing. So what we want to do is we want to get some of this information as neutral as possible and get it into the hands of everyday Albertans. So we have initiatives where things like that, they trickle down through our organizational structure, and then we have teams on the ground who print off a bunch of these, fold them, take them to the neighborhood post office and do a neighborhood mail. And we want to tailor those to different groups. Like, Edmonton has 30 or 35 different almost mini municipalities everywhere, and they all have different concerns. So we want to get a lot of these things on things like that and get them into the hands of Albertans so they can at least know what the pro and con to these certain things are, and then help them make a decision going forward.
So
Part of the Let's Talk.
We need to get them into the hands of the CAs.
Well, everybody.
Well, everybody,
Yeah,
but
everybody.
that's start for us. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
And again, those, believe it or not, it's not free to print off 1 million pieces of paper. The math, it's actually pretty expensive, which is why we have to hand those frustratingly, annoyingly yellow buckets every time we do these things. That's what we use this money for.
My name is Robin Wheel. I've been a resident here. My grandchildren are about 6 generations on the same land. First off, I want to thank you guys for coming. And I've been to several of your meetings. And I want to thank the people that have come out tonight. Because I think one of the biggest problems is misinformation, the wrong information. And I've learned more coming to your rallies, your meetings about Alberta than I didn't know even existed. I think the biggest problem we have is we don't have unity. We need unity to make something happen. We need unity to make a change. We cannot sit on our hands. That's why I said I'm glad to see neighbors out, because I've been to several of your meetings, and you have a following that come with you. But it's disappointing to see the ones in that community that are showing up. It's disappointing to the ones that I'm not a good speaker, I'm a little bit shy, a little bit nervous. I just about didn't come up. But I felt compelled to come up because we need change. We need to look at the common things that we have. It's going to be a challenge. I'm not saying I'm for sovereignty or independence. I'm not saying where I'm standing on that. What I am saying, I'm fed up with Ottawa. What I'm saying is I'm fed up for my grandchildren not having a future. I'm fed up with what we've had in the West. And I think we need to get off our gloves. We need to, if nothing else, I look at the referendum and I talk to my neighbors and I say, are you coming? No. You can't get them to talk about it. Let's talk Alberta. Let's talk. I commend you guys for going out and having these meetings, because we need educated. I needed educated. It's going to be a tough road. Whether it's sovereignty or independence, it's going to be a rough road. It's going to be a rough road to change. If nothing else, a referendum is going to give our Alberta government power, because the people are behind them. They're not sitting on their gloves. We need to get off our gloves. We need to talk, and that's what you guys are saying. I'm being an echo, I guess. But we need to talk to our neighbors if they'll talk to you. I'm running into people, they just don't want to talk. It's kind of like, oh, you want to talk about COVID? No.
Oh, you said COVID. 13 now.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Because we have not only a government, but we have a whole system that shuts our freedom of speech down.
Yeah. Well, the people do it to each other as well, right?
Exactly.
And that's a problem.
Exactly. I had firsthand experience. I pastor a church. I was invited to preach at a church in Missouri in January. I went down, they live streamed. First time I'd ever had live stream. Our church, our little church in here, we never shut down during COVID. I'm not gonna. We weren't stupid, but we didn't shut down. I preached a message. I knew it was probably controversial. I didn't know what Missouri believed or anything else. It didn't last 24 hours. Live streamed, and it was shut down because the content was unacceptable. I was preaching the gospel. I was preaching that we need to stand for the truth. And if we don't know the truth, that's what I say, I'm getting more educated coming to your meetings about Alberta. I didn't know we didn't vote. I didn't know we were colonized into Canada. I didn't know these things. Your fellow at Breton that shared from Edmonton that give all the history. It was remarkable. Because my grade 11 in Winfield High didn't give me that. I didn't have it. We don't know our constitutions? No, we probably, it's a bunch of gibberish. We maybe can't understand it. But we can talk to ones that do understand it. And it's going to be a challenge to go ahead. We got questions. Everybody's got questions. They say, well, if we separate or if we have a referendum, is our federal government going to do exactly what they did to our trucks? Shut us down. I've got neighbors that have sold land and they've put their money under their mattress. I'm not going to tell you who they are. Just an address. Because we have a threat of seizing bank accounts. We have stuff that I think, for the most part, we're fed up with. We need change. We need to embrace change. We need to be willing again to get off our hands and do it. That's one question that one neighbor gave me, and I didn't have the answer. Does the federal government have the power, if we have a referendum, to come in and say, pull in the tanks, pull in the military, pull in the RCMP, because they're federal, and say, and you got to toe the line? We don't know this. I don't know it. But I'm willing to stand for change. And I think that's what we need is to be able to stand and look at the positives. We're going to have, I already know all four of you don't get along. You all got differences of opinion. But you're standing on a stage because you're fed up with what we got. We need to major on the things we know are wrong and that we can make a change. And I think that the other things will work their way through. It's a challenge. We ask ourselves, well, what are the chiefs are attacking, the Aboriginal world is attacking the whole independence. I don't know how much power they got, but I know we need change. And I'm just going to leave that with you.
So, no word of a lie, but prison libraries do not allow books about prison escape. That's true. Because if they knew how, they would. This is why our education system doesn't teach the true history of Alberta. If you actually knew how the chains were put in place, and you were aware that you were chained, and you actually fully understood the Constitution and how it's been used against you, you would have revolted decades ago. The whole reason why they keep you passive and put hockey on the TV and do the Olympics every 4 years and wave the Canadian flag is to kind of keep you distracted. Because if you knew how to escape, you would. So coming out to these events is basically the prison escape manual. And when you grab those little pamphlets and you share them out, don't grab one. Take a few. Leave them, in a coffee shop. Leave them in the doctor's waiting room. Let other people find them and share them. Because quite frankly, we need to learn how to dig some tunnels and get out of this prison.
Gentlemen, I'd like to thank
You're gonna have to move that up high.
Yeah,
he's up there.
Because if I bend down, my ears pop. Appreciate you all coming out this evening. My question is, we have so many smaller groups that are fighting for Alberta independence. I'd like to know your opinions on how we get them all together. And then once we can have a cohesive group, as Mr. Ben Crane said at the beginning, we always look for an identity and a group to belong to that identity. We need a certain leadership that can take that voice and not, how do we say, fracture that conservative vote? Because this is going to turn into a political party. I'd like to know your thoughts of who could lead this. Because we need a leader that can speak our voice. And we don't have that now. We have Mr. Rath, we have Mr. Sylvester, we have all of you on stage, you all have a voice, but who's going to carry that big voice to the majority of the population that they can follow so that we can make this succeed?
That comes up all the time, because quite frankly, most people are followers and they're looking for a leader to follow. But caution to that idea. World War II wasn't won by a single leader. It was an alliance. They had a common goal. They wanted to stop something from spreading. So they all had a common goal and worked on it. The French and the English were killing each other for hundreds of years before this. They didn't like become buddies and then decide to go ahead and go into this war. They just had a common enemy and a common goal. And I think it would be a mistake at this stage to try and make some sort of unified under one leader. Because quite frankly, you're helping the government by showing them who to put a target on. They take out that one leader, then what? The whole thing falls apart? And what if Mr. Rath and Sylvester and Wilson don't agree? Are we going to have a vote? Who's going to try and stop Mr. Rath from speaking? I'm not going to try. No. What I actually love about this particular movement is it is decentralized and there's many voices out there. Because yes, there is an identity for Albertans, but we also have our tribes. I might join the tribe of Crane. It sounds lots of fun. But what I'm trying to get at is you can find somebody that speaks for you. And going into the next stage when we have delegates going to the Constitutional Convention, there's going to be like 80 different voices there and not one single leader. I'm looking forward to the day where we elect a leader under Republic of Alberta as a first president. At that point, I'm looking forward to it. But I think it's a little premature because we got to give them the whack-a-mole game. So there's multiple people. When it gets too much for them to silence us, we're doing a good job. So I would actually encourage a common goal, which is let's end this tyranny with Ottawa. I think we all agree with that one. In one way, shape, or form. But to have a single leader, I think it would be a bit of a fool's errand at this stage, and it may distract and divide far more than you think it would at this stage. That's my opinion on that one.
Well, no, I appreciate that. And thank you for that. I'd like to hear from the other members on the panel on that as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's the leader.
He's the new leader. I get it.
I agree with everything Jason said, and I like to bring up other successful independence movements, of which India is one. India was, it certainly wasn't people that were unified under one umbrella, theologically wise. Like there was atheists, Christians, Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, all working together to get rid of the British, right? Nobody would dream of asking them, hey, you guys need to all be united. Well, they're not going to be united because they're very distinctly different groups. However, we can have common cause together and work towards a goal. Our allies in World War II don't seem, well, I mean, who knows what's real these days, but Russia doesn't seem to be allies with us now. Like we're not, it's strained the tensions, right? So the allies of yesterday for a common cause may not be the allies of today or tomorrow. The other thing I want to caution is, and I've felt very inclined to share this with people. We have this idea of a politician, right? This politician is going to come and they're going to save us from something and they're going to be perfect in every way and we're going to follow them and things are going to be great. And I got to tell you folks, there is no such politician. If you're looking for perfection and a leader that will never let you down, a king that's going to be benevolent and perfect, I would be happy to introduce you to my friend Jesus of Nazareth. But short of him, there isn't a human being on this planet that is the perfect politician that we believe will come and save us. Salvation is available and it's free, but not from a politician. And we do the best we can with our politicians, but at the end of the day, it comes down to our willingness and ability to advocate and support the people who we believe at the time are going to do the best job of amplifying our voice in whichever parliament or legislature or whatever we want it in.
Yes, and to that I will just add that I agree with what Jason says as well, totally, and Chris, and like in Quebec, like In the 70s, there was no openness for a political party and all that, so the FLQ was created. And the FLQ was a group of a small independent people that were behind the same cause. And fast forward to 1995 at the referendum, and in the referendum we had so our party had our own campaign, the PQ had their campaign, and the Bloc had their campaign, and we're totally separated, targeting different stuff. Plus, we were encouraging. There was like the lawyers for the yes, and the dentists for the yes, and so there was like a multitude of groups to get to that percentage, despite having a leader. So I believe at the stage where that movement is right now, we need to keep our separate identity and that plurality under the same goal of right now, October 19, the question we have to go vote.
Do you want to
okay, well, yeah, Sheane is like making. We'll close in prayer. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege we have to express ourselves freely. Thank you for the question asked today. Thank you for all those who took some time apart to come and listen to us. And Lord, I'm praying for the remainder of this campaign. I'm praying for a peaceful conduct all over and respectful of opinions. And I'm praying, Lord, for a good and safe return home tonight. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
I get
Thanks again, folks.
I get 2 seconds to encourage. Get Alberta flags. As I'm driving from east to Ponoka, I hardly saw any Alberta flags all along the highway. And when you see Alberta flags in somebody's yard, you go, those are my people. So go get Alberta flags if you live along, I don't care what road, maybe, I live at the end of a road and I'm going to put one up on the corner. So go get Alberta flags and fly them proud because it encourages everybody else. Oh yeah, please help put chairs away.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So, Mr. Crane, when exactly did you realize how cool you actually are?
Well, it wasn't until I looked in the mirror one day. I was always afraid to do that.
I would be too.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know who that guy was. But then one day he introduced himself to me, and I just realized I couldn't get any better.
Well, that's awesome to hear.
But it's from hanging with guys like you that, you know. Before that, it was just a scary thing to do. But looking at you, I realized that, you know, I'm not the only one. That if you can do it, I can. So, been a real role model. I've grown up all my life wanting to be just like you, Chris.
I feel like you're not being a comedian anymore, and now I'm starting to blush, and I might have to go look in the mirror.
I'm butt ugly serious.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
That means a lot coming from a wise old man such as yourself.
Thank you very much, young feller.
Thanks, man. That was nice, eh? Thanks, Brad. Before you go, folks, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that there's a very large team of people that are working behind the scenes to make these things happen. And I'm a busy guy. I don't always get to, I don't always remember to give a shout out to all the volunteers and the people that help. But I want to do that right now. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that this wouldn't happen without those people. So thank you very much to all of the volunteers, the supporters, and everyone that makes this possible. You see 4 guys up on a stage there. There's probably 30 or 40 or 50 people behind the scenes that make this happen. And I really, truly appreciate them. And we appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Yes, I'll do the stumpy thing. Here she comes. Meow! Let's talk, Alberta.